Clare stood at the church altar in her flowing white gown, her hands trembling as she clutched her small bouquet. The beautiful flowers her mother had chosen seemed to mock her now. 20 minutes had passed since the ceremony was supposed to begin, and the whispers from the packed pews were getting louder. "Where is he?" someone hissed from the third row. "This is so embarrassing," another voice added. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she glanced toward the church doors, hoping to see Ethan rushing in with some explanation. Maybe traffic, maybe a flat tire, maybe anything that would make sense of this nightmare. The priest shifted uncomfortably beside her, checking his watch for the 5th time. Clare's maid of honor, Sarah, squeezed her arm gently, but even Sarah's face showed growing concern. At 3 months pregnant, Clare's dress had been carefully altered to hide her growing belly, but she felt exposed and vulnerable standing there. The guests behind her were no longer whispering. They were talking openly now, their voices mixing into a buzz of confusion and pity. Clare closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm the baby growing inside her. Something was terribly, terribly wrong, and everyone knew it except her. The priest cleared his throat loudly, trying to restore some dignity to the situation. "Perhaps we should wait just a few more minutes," he said kindly, but his voice carried across the silent church like a bell. Clare felt hundreds of eyes burning into her back. She turned slightly and saw Ethan's family in the front row. His mother looking anywhere but at Clare, his father checking his phone with an annoyed expression. Even his little nephew, who was supposed to be the ring bearer, seemed confused by the tension in the air. Her own family sat across the aisle, her mother's face pale with worry, her father clenching his jaw in anger. Clare had never felt so alone in a room full of people who were supposed to love and support her. The wedding photographer lowered his camera awkwardly, unsure whether to keep taking pictures of this disaster. The organist had stopped playing 15 minutes ago, leaving only the sound of rustling programs and uncomfortable coughs. Clare placed a protective hand over her stomach, feeling the tiny life inside her that should have been a source of joy today. Instead, she felt ashamed, as if her pregnancy was somehow to blame for Ethan's absence. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Then she heard footsteps at the back of the church, and her heart leaped with desperate hope. But it wasn't Ethan walking down the aisle. It was his best man, Marcus, looking pale and uncomfortable as he approached the altar. In his hand was a white envelope that seemed to glow under the church lights. "Clare," Marcus said quietly when he reached her, "I'm so sorry. Ethan asked me to give this to you." The envelope felt heavy in her hands, heavier than paper should feel. Clare's name was written on the front in Ethan's familiar handwriting, the same handwriting that had written, "I love you," in birthday cards and grocery lists. She could feel everyone watching as she opened it with shaking fingers. The single piece of paper inside contained only 3 sentences, but they destroyed her world completely. Her knees nearly buckled as she read the words. Sarah grabbed her arm to steady her, while Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "What does it say?" Sarah whispered. Clare couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. The paper fell from her hands and drifted to the altar steps like a dying bird. Without a word, she gathered up her dress and ran. Her high heels clicked against the marble floor as she fled down the aisle, past all the shocked faces, past the beautiful flowers and decorations, past the life she thought she was going to have. Behind her, chaos erupted as guests began talking all at once. The church parking lot was blindingly bright after the dim interior, and Clare stumbled toward the curb, her wedding dress catching on the rough pavement. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with her carefully applied makeup and creating dark stains on her white bodice. She could hear car doors slamming behind her as guests began to leave, their conversations floating on the warm afternoon air. Some people were taking pictures with their phones, and Clare realized with horror that her humiliation was probably already being shared on social media. "Poor thing," someone said as they walked past. "I always thought something was off about that Ethan," another voice added. Clare sank onto the concrete curb, not caring that her beautiful dress was getting dirty. She pulled Ethan's letter from where she had crumpled it in her fist and read it again, hoping the words had somehow changed. I'm not ready to be tied down with a child. Don't look for me. I'm sorry, but this is for the best. The words blurred through her tears. 3 years together, a baby on the way, and this was how it ended, with a cowardly note delivered by someone else. She placed both hands on her stomach and whispered to her unborn child, "It's just us now, little one." That's when she heard the quiet hum of an expensive engine pulling up beside her. A sleek black limousine glided to a stop directly in front of her, its tinted windows reflecting Claire's tear-streaked face. She had never seen such an elegant car up close. It looked like something from a movie, completely out of place in the modest church parking lot. The rear window rolled down silently, revealing a man's profile. Claire quickly wiped her eyes, embarrassed to be seen in such a state by a stranger. "Excuse me," came a deep, calm voice from inside the car. "Are you all right?" Claire looked up and found herself staring into the kindest brown eyes she had ever seen. The man appeared to be in his late 30s, with dark hair and a face that looked like it belonged in a business magazine. His suit was perfectly tailored, and there was something about his presence that made her feel instantly safer. "I'm fine," Claire lied, her voice cracking. "Just having a bad day." The man studied her wedding dress, her tears, and the chaos of departing guests behind her. His expression grew gentle and understanding. "No bride should have to sit on a curb alone," he said quietly. "My name is Daniel. May I offer you a ride somewhere?" Claire hesitated. Her mother had always warned her about getting into cars with strangers. But then she looked back at the church and saw more people pointing phones in her direction. What did she have to lose that hadn't already been taken from her? "You don't deserve this," Daniel said simply as Claire climbed into the limousine. The interior was like stepping into another world. Soft leather seats, a minibar, and classical music playing softly from hidden speakers. Claire had never been in such luxury. Her hands shook as she tried to arrange her dress properly, very aware of how out of place she looked in her tear-stained wedding gown. "I don't even know you," she said, suddenly feeling foolish for accepting help from a stranger. "Sometimes strangers are the safest people to be around," Daniel replied, pressing a button to raise the privacy screen between them and the driver. "They don't have expectations or judgments. They just see someone who needs help." He handed her a box of tissues from a compartment beside his seat. "Would you like me to take you home? Or somewhere else?" Claire realized she didn't know where she wanted to go. Her apartment was filled with wedding presents and reminders of Ethan. Her parents' house meant facing their disappointment and pity. Her friends would want to know every detail of what had happened. "I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted, the truth hitting her like a physical blow. Daniel nodded as if he understood completely. "Then we'll find somewhere." As the limousine pulled away from the church, Claire watched through the tinted windows as her old life disappeared behind her. She had no idea she was about to discover what true kindness looked like. The hotel Daniel brought her to was the kind of place Claire had only seen in magazines. The lobby had marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff members who moved with quiet efficiency. Claire felt every bit as out of place as she had expected, trailing her dirty wedding dress across the pristine floor. "Mr. Williams," the manager greeted Daniel warmly. "How may we assist you today?" "I need your best available suite," Daniel said without hesitation. "Something private and comfortable." The manager's eyes flickered to Claire's wedding dress and tear-streaked makeup, but his professional smile never wavered. "Of course, sir. Right away." Within minutes, Claire found herself in an elevator heading to the top floor. The suite Daniel had arranged was bigger than her entire apartment, with a living room, bedroom, and bathroom that looked like something from a luxury magazine. "I can't possibly accept this," Claire said, overwhelmed by the generosity. "I don't even know how much this costs, but I'm sure I can't afford it." Daniel was already at the door, preparing to leave her in private. "Don't worry about the cost. Just rest, order room service, and take care of yourself." "But why?" Claire asked desperately. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Daniel paused at the door and turned back to her. His expression was serious but gentle. "Because you're carrying life inside you," he said simply. "And that life is worth more than anything someone else threw away." The door closed quietly behind him, leaving Claire alone with his words echoing in her heart. Claire spent the rest of the evening learning about her mysterious rescuer through the internet. Daniel Williams, she discovered, was one of the city's most successful businessmen. At 36, he had built a tech company from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. The tabloid articles painted him as cold and unreachable. The bachelor who says no to everyone. There were photos of him at charity galas and business events, always impeccably dressed, always alone. Several articles mentioned that he had never been married and rarely dated publicly. "Mysterious tech mogul keeps private life under lock and key," read one headline. Another article called him the man no woman can catch. Claire couldn't reconcile these descriptions with the gentleman who had rescued her from the church parking lot. The Daniel in the tabloids seemed like a completely different person from the one who had looked at her with such understanding and kindness. She ordered room service, the first real meal she had been able to stomach in weeks thanks to morning sickness. As she ate, she wondered why someone so successful and seemingly self-sufficient would stop to help a stranger. Her phone buzzed with text messages from friends and family, but she wasn't ready to explain what had happened. Outside her window, the city twinkled with lights, and Claire realized that for the first time in months, she felt safe. But she also felt guilty for accepting so much from someone she barely knew. The next morning brought a gentle knock at the door. Claire opened it to find Daniel holding 2 cups of coffee and a bag from a nearby bakery. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Decaf, in case caffeine isn't good for the baby." The thoughtfulness of this small detail nearly brought tears to her eyes again. Ethan had never remembered that she was supposed to limit caffeine during pregnancy. They sat in the suite's living room as morning light streamed through the large windows. Daniel had traded his formal suit for dark jeans and a simple blue shirt, making him seem more approachable and human. "I can't keep accepting your help," Claire said, cupping the warm coffee mug in her hands. "You've already done too much for someone you don't even know. What's your plan then?" Daniel asked gently. Claire realized she didn't have one. "I guess. Go back to my apartment, figure out how to return all the wedding gifts, find a job that has good health insurance for when the baby comes, and deal with whatever media attention this situation might bring." Claire's stomach dropped. Media attention? Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her several news websites. The headlines made her feel sick. "Bride abandoned at altar. Wedding day disaster goes viral. Pregnant woman left standing at church." There were photos of her crying on the curb, photos of her getting into the limousine, and speculation about who the mysterious man was who had helped her. "Oh no," Claire whispered. "This is going to follow me everywhere. Isn't it?" Daniel nodded seriously. "Probably for a while. These stories tend to take on a life of their own." Claire felt trapped, like she was suffocating under the weight of public humiliation. Then Daniel made an offer that would change everything. "Stay here," Daniel said simply. "At least until things calm down and you figure out your next steps." Claire stared at him in disbelief. "I can't possibly do that. I don't have money to pay for a hotel room like this, and I won't be a charity case." "It's not charity," Daniel said firmly. "It's human decency. You're pregnant. You've been through a traumatic experience, and you need time to heal and make decisions. What kind of person would I be if I threw you back into that chaos?" "But people will talk," Claire protested. "They'll say terrible things about both of us." "Let them talk." Daniel's voice held a strength that made Claire feel protected. "I've learned that people who matter don't judge, and people who judge don't matter." Claire wanted to argue, but she was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, and spiritually. The idea of facing her empty apartment, returning wedding gifts, and dealing with reporters felt overwhelming. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she said quietly. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city below. "My mother was abandoned when she was pregnant with me," he finally said. "She had to face everything alone. The shame, the financial stress, the judgment. She never got the help she needed. He looked back at Claire with those kind brown eyes. Maybe I can't change what happened to her, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to you. Claire felt her heart crack open with gratitude and something deeper, the recognition of genuine goodness in another human being. Okay, she whispered, just until I figure things out. Daniel's assistant, Margaret, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who clearly disapproved of the situation. Claire could hear her through the hotel suite's door, speaking in urgent whispers with her boss. Sir, the media is calling this a publicity stunt, Margaret said. They're saying you're using this poor girl's situation for attention. Your board of directors is concerned about your image. My image? Daniel's voice was calm but firm. Margaret, when did helping someone in need become bad for anyone's image? When cameras are involved, sir. There are photographers downstairs, reporters calling the office. Some are suggesting that you staged this whole thing. Claire pressed her ear closer to the door, feeling sick about the trouble she was causing for the man who had saved her. Let me be very clear, Daniel continued. I don't care what they're saying. I don't care what the board thinks. And I don't care about photographers. That woman in there has been through enough, and I won't abandon her because some people can't understand basic human kindness. There was silence, then Margaret's resigned sigh. Yes, sir. I'll handle the press as best I can. Thank you, Margaret. And please arrange for additional security. I don't want anyone bothering her. When their voices faded, Claire moved away from the door, overwhelmed by Daniel's loyalty to someone he barely knew. She was beginning to understand that she had been rescued by someone truly extraordinary. But she also realized that her presence in his life was causing him problems she hadn't considered. 3 days later, Ethan finally surfaced. Claire was eating breakfast in her hotel suite when her phone rang with his familiar ringtone. Her hands shook as she answered. Claire, we need to talk. Ethan's voice was angry, not apologetic. I'm coming over. You don't know where I am? Claire said, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. I've seen the news. Everyone has. You're staying at the Grandview Hotel with some rich guy. What exactly are you trying to pull here? The accusation in his voice made Claire's blood boil. What am I trying to pull? Ethan, you left me at the altar. You abandoned me and your baby with a note. Our baby, Ethan corrected harshly. And don't think you can use my child to trap some billionaire. That's not going to work. Claire stood up abruptly, her protective instincts flaring. Your child? You mean the child you ran away from? The child you said you weren't ready for? I've been thinking, Ethan continued as if she hadn't spoken. Maybe I was hasty. Maybe we can work this out. Work what out? Claire's voice rose. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You broke my heart. You! I'm coming to get you, Ethan interrupted. And I'm bringing lawyers. That baby is mine, and I have rights. The line went dead, leaving Claire staring at her phone in shock. For the first time since the wedding disaster, she felt truly angry instead of just hurt. And for the first time in 3 years, she was ready to fight back. When Daniel arrived an hour later, he found Claire pacing the hotel suite like a caged lioness. Her eyes were bright with fury, and there was a strength in her posture he hadn't seen before. He called, she said without preamble. Ethan, he's threatening to take the baby. Daniel's jaw tightened. What exactly did he say? That I'm using his child to trap you. That he has rights. That he's bringing lawyers. Claire stopped pacing and faced Daniel directly. I won't let him use this baby as a weapon. I won't let him hurt my child the way he hurt me. Our first priority is making sure you and the baby are safe, Daniel said calmly. I'm calling my legal team. No, Claire said firmly. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Daniel, but this is my fight now. I need to handle this myself. Daniel studied her face, seeing a transformation taking place. The broken, abandoned woman from the church parking lot was disappearing, replaced by someone stronger and more determined. You don't have to handle it alone, he said gently. Yes, I do. Claire's voice was steady and sure. For 3 years, I let Ethan make decisions for me. I let him tell me what I was worth, what I deserved, how I should feel. Never again. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. He wants to see what kind of mother I'll be? Let me show him. Daniel smiled, recognizing the fierce protectiveness of a mother defending her child. All right, he said, but I'm staying close, just in case you need backup. Claire turned back to him with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Thank you for everything, but especially for helping me remember who I really am. That evening, Daniel surprised Claire with an offer that took her breath away. Come with me somewhere, he said, holding up an elegant black dress. There's a charity gala tonight, and I think it would be good for you to get out of this room. Claire stared at the dress. It was beautiful, sophisticated, and clearly expensive. Daniel, I can't go to a fancy event. People will stare. They'll whisper. They'll see a beautiful, strong woman who refused to let anyone define her worth. Daniel interrupted. Besides, hiding in this room won't make the stories go away. Sometimes the best defense is to show the world who you really are. The dress fit perfectly, and when Claire looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For months, she had felt frumpy and unattractive because of her pregnancy. But the elegant black fabric draped beautifully over her growing belly, making her look radiant rather than awkward. At the gala, photographers did indeed flash their cameras and people did whisper. But Daniel never left her side, introducing her to business associates and treating her like she belonged there. You look stunning, he whispered in her ear as they posed for photos. Let them see your strength. Claire stood a little taller, smiled a little brighter. For the first time since the wedding disaster, she felt like herself again. But across the room, she noticed a familiar figure watching them with angry eyes. Ethan had found them, and he didn't look pleased by what he saw. The confrontation happened in the hotel lobby the next morning. Claire was returning from a walk when she saw Ethan waiting by the elevators, his face dark with fury. Quite a show you put on last night, he said loudly enough for other guests to hear. Playing dress up with your sugar daddy. Claire felt every eye in the lobby turn toward them, but instead of shrinking away, she stood straighter. Lower your voice, Ethan. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? Ethan laughed bitterly. You're the one who went from abandoned bride to billionaire's girlfriend in less than a week. Real classy, Claire. What I do with my life is no longer your concern, Claire replied calmly. You made that clear when you left me at the altar. That baby you're carrying is my concern, Ethan shot back. And I won't let you use my child to secure your financial future. The words hit Claire like a slap, but instead of crumbling, she felt her anger crystallize into something powerful and protective. Your child? She said, her voice carrying across the marble lobby. The child you called a burden? The child you said would tie you down? The child you abandoned before it was even born? People were pulling out their phones, recording the confrontation. Claire realized this moment would probably be all over social media within hours. For once, she didn't care. I have something to tell you, Ethan, she continued, her voice growing stronger. You're right about one thing. You do have rights as this baby's father. But I have rights too. And I will never, ever let you hurt my child the way you hurt me. She walked past him toward the elevators, leaving him standing alone in the lobby. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversations of impressed onlookers. For the first time in her life, Claire had stood up for herself publicly, and it felt incredible. Daniel was waiting in the suite when Claire returned, his face grave as he scrolled through his phone. It's already online, he said, showing her the screen. Videos of your confrontation with Ethan are going viral. Claire's heart sank as she watched herself on the small screen, reliving the lobby confrontation. Oh no, this is exactly what you were worried about, isn't it? Your reputation. Look at the comments, Daniel interrupted gently. Claire scrolled through the responses, expecting to see judgment and criticism. Instead, she found something unexpected. Good for her. That guy is a coward. Finally, someone who stands up for themselves. She handled that with such grace and strength. Team Clare all the way. The public is on your side, Daniel said, sitting beside her on the couch. They see what I see. A woman who refuses to be a victim. Clare felt tears welling up, but for the first time in weeks, they were tears of relief rather than sadness. I can't believe people are actually supporting me. Why wouldn't they? You're showing the world what real courage looks like. Daniel paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. Clare, there's something I want to offer you. But I need you to know I'm not trying to rescue you or fix your problems. What is it? Daniel took a deep breath. Stay with me. Not here in the hotel but in my home. At least until the baby is born. You shouldn't have to face Ethan's legal threats alone, and you shouldn't have to worry about money or security while you're pregnant. Clare stared at him, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his offer. I need you to be sure, she said quietly, because if I say yes, there's no going back. My problems become your problems. My complications become your complications. Daniel smiled, and Clare saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip. I'm sure, he said simply. More sure than I've ever been about anything. Moving into Daniel's home was like stepping into a different world. His house was a sprawling modern masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and art that probably cost more than most people's cars. But what surprised Clare most was how Daniel had prepared for her arrival. The guest suite he'd arranged for her had been stocked with prenatal vitamins, pregnancy books, and comfortable clothes in her size. There was even a rocking chair by the window, as if he'd been planning for her to stay long-term. You didn't have to do all this? Clare said, running her hand along the smooth wood of the rocking chair. I wanted you to be comfortable, Daniel replied. This is your home now, for as long as you need it to be. That night, as Clare settled into the most comfortable bed she'd ever slept in, she tried to process how dramatically her life had changed. A week ago, she had been preparing to marry a man who saw her pregnancy as a burden. Now she was living in a mansion with someone who treated her unborn child as a blessing. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and her heart sank when she saw Ethan's name. I'm filing for custody. My lawyer says I have a strong case. Enjoy your fancy house while you can. Clare screenshot the message and forwarded it to Daniel, then turned off her phone. In the morning, she would deal with lawyers and legal threats. Tonight, she was going to sleep peacefully for the first time in months, knowing she wasn't alone. But as she drifted off to sleep, Clare couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Daniel's legal team was unlike anything Clare had ever encountered. Led by a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Chun, they gathered around the conference table in Daniel's home office like generals planning a war. Ethan Morrison's case is weak, Victoria explained, spreading documents across the polished table. He can't claim abandonment when he literally abandoned you at the altar. But he does have parental rights, and he's going to fight dirty. What does that mean? Clare asked, one hand protectively over her growing belly. It means he'll try to paint you as an unfit mother, Victoria said bluntly. He'll claim you're using the pregnancy to manipulate wealthy men, that you're emotionally unstable, that your living situation is inappropriate. Clare felt her heart sink. Maybe he's right. Maybe it does look bad that I'm living with Daniel. Actually, Victoria said with a slight smile, that's where this gets interesting. Our investigation into Mr. Morrison's finances has revealed some discrepancies. She pulled out another folder, this one thick with financial documents. It appears your ex-fiancé has been engaging in some creative accounting with his business taxes. The IRS would be very interested in these irregularities. Daniel leaned forward. Are you saying he's been committing tax fraud? I'm saying he's in no position to question anyone else's moral character, Victoria replied smoothly. Men who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Clare stared at the documents, realizing that the man she had loved and trusted had been lying about much more than just his commitment to their relationship. What happens now? She asked. Victoria's smile grew sharper. Now we show him exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong people. For the first time since this nightmare began, Clare felt like she might actually win. The custody hearing was held in a sterile courtroom that smelled of old wood and disappointment. Clare sat beside Victoria, trying to look calm while her heart hammered against her ribs. Across the aisle, Ethan sat with his own lawyer, a man who looked like he'd crawled out from under a rock. Ethan himself looked different, thinner, more desperate, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Your Honor," Ethan's lawyer began, "my client is fighting for his parental rights to an unborn child whose mother has moved in with a virtual stranger. Miss Thompson has shown poor judgment and questionable morals." "Objection," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "Counsel is making assumptions not supported by evidence." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked annoyed by the dramatic language. "Mr. Foster, please stick to facts rather than character assassinations." Victoria stood to present their case, and Clare watched in amazement as the lawyer systematically destroyed Ethan's credibility. Financial records showing his tax evasion, phone records proving he had planned to abandon the wedding days in advance, and testimony from witnesses who had seen him with another woman just hours before the ceremony was supposed to take place. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Victoria continued, "Mr. Morrison has made no attempt to provide financial support for the child he claims to want custody of. He has not attended a single doctor's appointment, has not inquired about the mother's health, and has shown interest in the child only after learning that Miss Thompson has received support from others." Clare watched Ethan's face crumble as each piece of evidence was presented. For the first time since she had known him, he looked truly afraid. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. "Mr. Morrison, your behavior throughout this case has been appalling," she said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. "You abandoned a pregnant woman at the altar, failed to provide any support for your unborn child, and are now facing serious questions about your financial conduct." Ethan's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge held up her hand. "I'm not finished. Your client's motion for custody is denied. Furthermore, given the evidence of financial fraud presented here today, I am recommending that the appropriate authorities investigate Mr. Morrison's business practices." Clare felt her knees go weak with relief. Beside her, Victoria squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Miss Thompson," the judge continued, turning to Clare, "I want to be clear that this court recognizes your right to determine what is best for your child. Your living situation appears stable and supportive, and you have shown remarkable strength in difficult circumstances." As they left the courtroom, Clare saw Ethan surrounded by reporters asking questions about the fraud allegations. His face was pale, his confident demeanor completely gone. Outside on the courthouse steps, Daniel was waiting for her with the biggest smile she had ever seen. "It's over," Clare said, falling into his arms. "It's really over." "No," Daniel said, holding her tightly. "It's just beginning." As cameras flashed around them, Clare realized he was right. Her old life was over, but her new life, her real life, was just starting. That evening, Daniel found Clare sitting in the rocking chair by her bedroom window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Her hand rested on her belly, which had grown noticeably rounder in recent weeks. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Free," Clare said simply. "For the first time in months, maybe years, I feel free." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city come alive with lights as darkness fell. Clare had grown to love these quiet moments with Daniel. No drama, no crisis to handle, just peaceful companionship. "Can I ask you something?" Clare said suddenly. "Anything. Why did you really stop for me that day? And don't say it was just because I looked like I needed help. There are lots of people who need help." Daniel was quiet for so long that Clare thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and thoughtful. "Because you reminded me of someone," he said. "My mother, actually. She was abandoned by my father when she found out she was pregnant. She spent my entire childhood working 3 jobs, struggling to make ends meet, never asking for help because she was too proud." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "She died when I was in college, still struggling, still alone. I always wondered what would have happened if just one person had stopped to help her when she needed it most. Claire felt tears welling up in her eyes. Daniel! When I saw you on that curb in your wedding dress, crying and holding your belly, I saw her, Daniel continued, and I couldn't drive past. I couldn't be another person who saw someone in need and did nothing. Claire reached over and took his hand. She would be proud of you. I hope so, Daniel said, squeezing her fingers gently. As they sat together in the growing darkness, Claire realized that what she was feeling for this man went far beyond gratitude. She was falling in love with him, and she had no idea if he felt the same way. The next few weeks passed peacefully, but Claire could sense something building between her and Daniel. He was unfailingly kind and gentle, making sure she had everything she needed, accompanying her to doctor's appointments, and even helping her set up a nursery in one of his spare rooms. But there were moments when their hands touched reaching for the same book, when he laughed at her jokes, when she caught him watching her with an unreadable expression that made her think there might be something deeper developing. Claire was 7 months pregnant now, moving more slowly but feeling healthier and happier than she had in years. The baby was active, kicking and rolling, and sometimes Daniel would feel the movement when his hand accidentally brushed her belly. Have you thought about names? He asked one evening as they worked together in the nursery, assembling a crib that had arrived that afternoon. A few, Claire said, running her hand along the smooth wood of the crib rail. I like Emma for a girl, or maybe Michael for a boy. Those are beautiful names, Daniel said, then hesitated. Claire, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever think about what happens after the baby is born? Where you'll go, what you'll do? The question caught Claire off guard. She had been so focused on getting through the pregnancy and the legal battles with Ethan that she hadn't thought much about the future. I don't know, she admitted. I guess I assumed I'd find an apartment, get a job, try to build a life for me and the baby. Daniel nodded, but something in his expression looked almost disappointed. That makes sense, he said quietly. As they continued working in silence, Claire wondered if she had given the wrong answer. But what was the right answer when she didn't know how Daniel really felt about her? Claire's due date was still 3 weeks away when Ethan made his final, desperate move. She woke up to find her phone buzzing with notifications. Dozens of them, all pointing to the same online article. Pregnant gold digger's secret revealed. Baby might not be ex-fiancé's. The article was vicious, filled with lies and speculation. It claimed that Claire had been cheating on Ethan, that the baby might not be his, and that she had been using the pregnancy to trap wealthy men. They're using old photos of you with some guy from college, Daniel said grimly as they scrolled through the article together, making it look like recent evidence of an affair. Claire felt sick. This is going to follow me and my baby forever. Every time someone Googles my name, they'll find this garbage. Not if we fight back, Daniel said firmly. Victoria is already working on a lawsuit for defamation, and we can demand DNA testing to prove the baby's paternity once and for all. That afternoon, they held a press conference. Claire stood at a podium outside Daniel's office building, her hands resting on her very pregnant belly, and told her story in her own words. I have nothing to hide, she said, her voice steady and strong. Ethan Morrison is the father of my child, and DNA testing will prove it. These lies are the desperate actions of a man who cannot accept responsibility for his own choices. The reporters peppered her with questions, but Claire answered each one calmly and honestly. When it was over, Daniel took her hand as they walked back to the car. You were incredible, he said. I've never seen anyone handle pressure like that. That night, as Claire prepared for bed, she realized something had shifted. She was no longer the broken woman who had been rescued from a church parking lot. She had become someone who could rescue herself. Claire went into labor on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before her due date. Daniel was in his home office on a conference call when he heard her gasp from the kitchen. I think it's time, she said, one hand pressed against the counter for support, the other cradling her belly. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic lights and Daniel's calm, reassuring voice as he held her hand and told her everything was going to be fine. Clare had never been more grateful for his steady presence. The labor was long but uncomplicated. Daniel never left her side, holding her hand through contractions, bringing her ice chips, and telling her how strong and brave she was. When Clare, they had decided on the name together, finally arrived at 11:47 p.m., she was perfect. Tiny but healthy, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. "She's beautiful," Daniel whispered as the nurse placed the baby in Clare's arms. "She's absolutely perfect." Clare looked down at her daughter, this little person she had protected and worried about for 9 months, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "I'm your mama, and I love you so much." When she looked up, she saw tears in Daniel's eyes as he gazed at both of them. "Thank you," Clare said softly. "For what?" "For helping me become the mother she deserves." Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over the city, painting everything in soft gold light. Clare's old life was officially over. Her new life, their new life, was just beginning. 6 months later, Clare stood in the same church where her wedding was supposed to have taken place. But this time, she wasn't wearing white, and she wasn't trembling with uncertainty. This time, she was wearing a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, holding baby Emma in her arms, and standing beside the man who had saved her life by teaching her to save herself. "We're here today not because of a contract or obligation," the priest said, "but because of love, the kind of love that grows from kindness, deepens through trust, and becomes stronger through shared challenges." Daniel looked down at Clare and Emma, his makeshift family that had become more real and precious to him than anything he had ever built or earned. "I promise to love you both," he said when it was time for vows. "Not because you need rescuing, but because you make my life complete." Clare's own vows were simple but heartfelt. "You were a stranger in a limousine who offered me a hand when I had nowhere to go. But you became so much more. You became home." As they kissed, sealing their unlikely love story, baby Emma gurgled happily in Clare's arms, as if she approved of the proceedings. In the pews, their friends and family applauded, but Clare barely heard them. She was thinking about that terrible day when she thought her life was ending, and how it had actually been the beginning of something beautiful. Somewhere across town, Ethan was serving community service for tax fraud, his business in ruins, his reputation destroyed. But Clare rarely thought about him anymore. She was too busy living her happily ever after with the man who had taught her that sometimes the best things in life come from strangers who see your worth when you can't see it yourself. Outside the church, a black limousine waited to take them home. Like and subscribe for more stories.